Good morning guys, and in this video I'm going to do the March garden tour. Now there's not too much to look at in the garden and the allotment, but there are a few things. But the main thing I'm going to be doing in this video is doing some sowing, some planting and some pricking out, and I can go through some of the different techniques I use for each and what I'll be getting up to in this growing season. So for those of you new to the channel, this is my vegetable growing space, and there's 5 raised beds here, all built out of sort of decking boards, and I've got one bed that has a sort of hoop house on it, which just adds a little bit of protection against birds and things. The only other feature worth mentioning is I've also got this archway here, which is great for growing sort of climbing crops like beans and peas up, just to make better use of the space. But I've got a few different things I want to plant here. I'm just going to talk you through those as we're going. So as March moves into April, you're going to have more and more of your seedlings that are sort of ready to plant out. And the biggest tip I can give any new grower regarding this is to invest in some of these trays. So these are the CD30 that you can buy on container wise, and basically the big benefit of them is they have these really large drainage holes, which is great for sort of root development of the seedlings, and it also prevents you kind of overwatering the plant and basically drowning the seedlings. The other really cool thing of it is as well, and I'll do a close-up video, is that you can, with a your little finger or whatever, you can really easily pull out a plug, and then that there is super easy to plant. You just dig a hole, throw it in, press it down, job done. And you can plant out a lot of plants really quickly with this method. So I'm going to sort of do a quick video of me filling up this bed a bit with some of these radish seedlings. So another tip while I'm doing this for beginners is get yourself a tool, like a nice sharp trowel or something that you can make deep and sort of quick and easy holes in. In this case I've got one of these sort of like hori knife things, which makes it really easy to very quickly just stab a hole in the ground, especially because you don't need a big hole. You don't need to like be excavating the ground or anything. You just need to be getting a quick hole in. The other big benefit of this is it's got measurements on. So because I'm doing multi-sown radishes here, which is like a little cluster of 2 or 3 radishes, I really want to give them about 6 inches space, so I can very quickly measure and then just dig the next hole ready for the next plant. And it's really simple and easy like that to make sure you've got good even spacing, which is important for the growth of the plant, but also so you get like sort of nice, neat, tidy rows, which I think are quite nice to look at sometimes. The other thing just to mention as well is I'm burying these quite deep, so these radishes grow really quickly, and with the light levels not being that great this time of year and me sort of having to germinate them indoors and things, they're a little bit leggy. Now what leggy means is basically the plant is sort of stretching towards the light, which can make the plant a bit weaker and a bit more susceptible to being killed by pests or disease, etc. It's not necessarily the healthiest plant, but these guys typically every year I've done this, they sort of sort themselves out. So I'm not too worried about this, but it's one of those things where the level of light you give your seedlings is really, really important. Now, before I give you a bit of detail about what else is growing here, and then we then head over to the allotment to do even more planting, I just want to talk about another crop I'm planting, which is spinach. Now, spinach is a bit of a weird one. Normally, I would let these get a bit bigger and I would let their first true leaves branch out. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So every seedling will have seedling leaves, and on these radishes you can see it's like almost like an ear shape, but then the actual radish leaf, the actual normal radish leaf, looks completely different. Now it's the same with spinach. Spinach have these long, almost sort of rabbit ear leaves, and then they have the standard spinach leaves. So what I'm saying is typically a bit of a beginner's tip, and I'm going against my own advice here, but I think it'll be okay, is wait until that first true leaf has got to a half decent size before you plant it out. The seedling at that stage is fairly robust and should be able to sort of power through the odd sort of slug eating a bit of it. Whereas if you plant them out when they're too small and a slug comes along, you could lose the whole plant quite easily. Now that's most of the planting done, and just to summarize, in this bed I've got some spinach, a few spare radish seeds, and these broad beans. Now these broad beans I sowed on like the 5th of December, no, not the 25th, that would be Christmas Day. I think it was like maybe the 26th or 27th of December. And as you can see, we've had some quite cold weather recently, and they're not looking too great. But when you look closer, you can see the bean is doing what's called tillering, which is where it sends up another shoot from the same sort of, from the base of the plant. And it will probably do maybe 4 or 5 tillers in terms of different stems, and those stems will be just as productive as the first main stem. So I'm not too worried, and I think my early sowing here has paid off, but obviously time will tell, and I've got more to plant at the allotment, which I'll show you in just a moment. Before I move on, you may have noticed these little plants on the edge of the beds, and I've got a couple dotted here and there. These are poached egg plants, and they're a bit of a companion plant for my vegetables. They'll have this beautiful sort of white flower with a yellow center, perfect for attracting sort of pollinator insects. But it's just one of those things that you can do to sort of increase the productivity of your bed, is plant some nice flowers in there. Now, next to that bed is my smallest bed, and I've got big plans for this one this season. I'm going to grow a very statuesque globe artichoke in here, and I've started off the seedlings indoors, which I'll show you in just a moment. But in each corner, I have got strawberry plants, and I've given them a bit of a winter prune, but there are some new sort of green shoots just starting to pop up. So I think, I should hopefully have some nice strawberries out of this bed as well. Now, there's not too much going on in these two beds at the minute. I've got some more poached eggplants just sort of growing away. They'll be quite nice bit of colour in the vegetable bed. And I have got my two smallest leeks, which I haven't bothered to harvest. And I'm wondering if I'll let them flower and they'll have that nice sort of large ball-shaped flower on them. But yeah, that's all that's growing in here. But there's plenty of space for me to fill up very soon. Now, finally, in the vegetable garden, I've got the hoop house bed, and I've got what I'm hoping is going to be a spring cabbage, but I don't know if it's actually going to form a head or if it's just going to end up running to seed. Time will tell, but I'm going to leave it in there doing its thing. I've obviously got the little sea of radish that I planted, and I've finally got this overwintering beetroot, which I'm quite happy about, to see some nice new green leaves popping up. So I think potentially there could end up being a harvest, but I've never overwintered beetroot before, and I'm not sure it's really advisable. So I'm not too sure what harvest I'll get, but giving it a go. And yeah. Now, lots of you following the channel will know that I love growing blueberries, and I've even made a complete guide on growing your own blueberries. But in that guide, you'll notice I'm growing blueberries in a different space, in a different planter. Now, unfortunately, I've had the garden redone, and I had to try and move the blueberries. But when I tried to do that, the whole thing fell apart, and I had to buy one of these, which I picked up in sale in the garden centre for £40, which is incredible because I think they try and sell these things for like £150. So I was really happy with that. But I've got the two original blueberry plants, which are up here, and I'll show you a little closer of them because they are starting to bud out now. And I've also planted two new blueberry plants, which is a pink lemonade variety. So rather than the sort of deep dark blue blueberries, which everyone's very accustomed to, these are a sort of pink variety. So I think it'll just look a bit different, and compared to the variety that I've originally had, which is called Elliot, the pink lemonade, you'll typically pick earlier, so there's a different harvesting period there, which I think is nice because you can sort of spread out how long you have blueberries for. Something to think about when you're picking your varieties as well. Now, before I go to the allotment to do some more planting and show you what's there, I thought I'd quickly show you what's going on here in the potting shed. And obviously right now, this time of year, it's the absolute sort of factory or powerhouse of the garden. Lots of new growth here. I've got everything from lupins, artichokes, borage. I've obviously got my onions, broad beans, beetroot, mint, marigolds, some nasturtiums, some more spinach, more radishes, and some lettuce here that I want to prick out. Now, pricking out is a term basically where you've got a big clump of seeds growing like this, and I want to pick out one and put them into their own pot. Now, why would you bother growing like this when you've got the additional step? Well, it's a great way to grow a lot of seeds or germinate a lot of seeds with in a small space with a small amount of compost. Here, I've probably got maybe 200, well, no, probably not that many, maybe 100 seedlings. And if you can imagine I had to have 100 pots here to germinate that many, it'd be a huge waste of space, huge waste of compost. Whereas here, I can just pick out what I need, and because seed is quite cheap, if I don't need that many plants, I can get rid of them. It's no problem. So in terms of pricking out, I would just get your sort of compost ready, and I'd make some holes, and I just use an old biro pen because it makes like nice holes. And then you're going to want to prick out your seedlings, so you're left with just the sort of leaves here and then a little bit of root. And all I'm going to do is try and wind that root into the hole I've already pre-made, get the seedling to about the right height, and then just gently push in the soil around the seedling so you get something that looks a little bit like that. Now, in terms of getting them out of the tray, the key that I'm trying to do is hold them by the leaves, don't hold them by the stem, and then either gently pull or sort of gently lever using your sort of tool or implement. And again, at this rate, it is quite time consuming and things, but from this, I will have, hopefully at the end of this, and I'll show you, a nice full tray of perfect lettuce seedlings that are nice and young, aren't going to be too impacted by the sort of transplanting of them into their new tray, and hopefully I'll have lots of lovely lettuce in the sort of late spring. So I'm here now at the allotment, and I'll do a quick zoom out sort of thing to show you the allotment, and it's kind of split into two parts. I've got the sort of raised vegetable beds, and then I've got these sort of fruit trees as well sort of behind me. Now, vegetable garden at home is pretty bare, and the allotment's even more bare, but that's all about to change with some of these plantings. So to start with, in this bit in front of me, I want to plant some more broad beans. Now, these ones were sown a bit later than the ones at the garden. These were sown sort of middle of February, and as you can see here, you know, they look great, and their roots are growing sort of prolifically, so really important to get these in the ground as soon as possible. Now, my main sort of plan with this is, again, a bit like anything else, just sort of stab a hole, fill it in, and then firm it down. And one thing I didn't mention, the other thing is, once you've done this, make sure you water your plants in. The reason for that is it helps the soil form around the roots and sort of prevents there being big sort of air gaps and things. But when we get these broad beans in, we'll move on to the next thing. Now, next up on the list to plant is onions. Now, I've already got some garlic growing here at the allotment that I sowed in the autumn as cloves, but I grew these onions from seed on about the 29th of December, same time as I did the broad beans I've just planted, and they're doing fine, but I think they're about ready now to get in the ground. Now, I've got a red onion variety called Red Baron, which is quite a sort of common, typical red onion seed variety, and the other one is a big, large white onion called Ringensburger. Never grown it before, but I'm going to give it a go. And yeah, again, planting very much the same as always. Now, the final plant I'm planting in this video is some borage, and I've got 3 plants I just want to dot around on the corners of these vegetable beds, just to act as a bit of a companion plant, also attracting pollinators, and finally, as well, just to give a bit of colour to the allotment as well. So quite interested with these because they grow quite well. They're very strong plant, very sturdy, not a lot sort of diminishes them or anything. So yeah, and I mean, even now, you know, considering I didn't sow these that long ago, sort of February, the root system is already massive, which is another indicator that this is going to do, is going to sort of be able to look after itself. So yeah, just going to pop these in, and that's the last sort of planting that I'm doing in this video. So I really hope you enjoy this video, and whatever you're doing this March, do get out into the vegetable garden, do plant some plants, sow some seeds, do some pricking out, and yeah, you'll hopefully have a really good 2025 growing vegetables.